and your peace. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Always glad to see you. Our best to you and your family. May we have the roll call, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Schilling?
Here.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Here.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Councilmember Howlerlack?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Here.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Here.
Councilmember Slater?
Here.
Quorum present. This evening, we're beginning with a presentation on the Art Institute of Michigan, Troy, an introduction by Turner Berg, and we're certainly pleased that this illustrious Art Institute, which is, of course, a spin-off from the famous Chicago Art Institute, has chosen Troy after Novi, because you already have one in Novi. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm definitely honored to be here in front of the council, the mayor, other key stakeholders, and folks involved in this meeting tonight, and elated to be part of the city of Troy. And as you referenced, the Art Institute has been in the greater Detroit metro area since 2007 at our Novi campus. And the amazing success that we've had there with helping folks that have this creative interest in commercial art and design has really motivated us to expand into Troy. And if you're not 100% familiar with what we do, we are a commercial art and design school specializing in fields such as interior design, fashion marketing. The great location here in Troy near the mall and other high-end retailers is perfect for our fashion degree. We do web design, we do digital photography, animation, and we had found out in Novi that there were a lot of folks out in this part of town that just don't go out to Novi. And so the convenience of being right off being here in a thriving business community, a destination for folks not only on, the east side, west side, but downtown, the ease of potential students to get where we are and be part of the education that we provide is very exciting. Today was my first day in our new facility. So literally we were figuring out where the keys were, and we have a beautifully renovated part of the building that's right on the corner of Maple and Stevenson, where Entertainment Book has been for many years. Instantly upon our arrival, they came down, and I was speaking with their vice president of HR about how they can leverage internships with our students to help them move the Entertainment Book into a more, if you will, relevant or digital form, thinking about text messaging and applications, and those are the types of things that our students do. And so it's just, we've been embraced with open arms. I'm really happy to be here and excited to be here, and look forward to a long partnership with the City of Troy and the folks in this part of the community. And we also brought along a packet so you can see some information about what we provide, a little bit about my background, and I would open it up to any questions anybody would have.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I do see in some of your information you talk about the culinary arts. I was wondering if you would have any culinary arts on this campus.
We are not expanding at this time culinary arts to this campus.
Well, Troy is known for fine eating. Great opportunity, I think, if you chose to expand it along that way.
I absolutely appreciate that, and as the campus director, I'm always looking for opportunities to expand our college, and really nothing's off the table as long as we can ensure that that there is a market there, and of course there is. I do know that a lot of our graduates from Novi still do place over here, and are able to take part in the community in that way. So whether or not we have a specific facility, I think that our graduates can be leveraged in this area.
Your programs sound very exciting.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you here.
Thank
And
you.
we appreciate you bringing the folder, giving us more information, because naturally people always ask us about what the latest is with Troy, so we'll be sure to explain and hopefully send some folks your way.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Any other questions from council? If we do, we have your contact information, and
Please do reach out.
And I did read some of your information online, and so that's good.
Thank you. Doing your research. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This evening, we have no carryover items or public hearings, so we'll go right to public comment. And I remind folks that our public comment section is on items that are on the agenda or not on the agenda, and that the time limit is the 5 minutes allowed each person. So we'll begin. The first person who signed up is Roger Walters.
I'd like to speak with Mr. Austin Hollister.
Excuse me. What? You signed up to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Please come up to the microphone.
And then I'll speak with Mr. Hollister too as well. Okay? We're talking about, I talked to Wade Fleming about the the traffic on Boyd Street. It's got to be a problem where the residential people in the area, it's all an elderly street. Mr. Fleming was in my house and sat in my driveway as we discussed about the high rate of speed going down Boyd Street. And we talked about the adjacent, it's not even a road street, a partial, it's a piece of property that you put a piece of cement over and you want to call it an exit, or whatever. I talked to the fire chief at the end of the street at Boyd. He told me that he's willing to close that exit off and that we have a new exit built prior to that. You built a school. Let me turn around.
Sir, our rules contend
Okay.
that you have to talk.
Okay, now get around me, okay?
They can see.
The school built supposedly for 340 students. We don't have the capacity of the road unless you're driving through grandma's front yard or my dad's front yard or my dad's backyard or my sister-in-law's front yard or my niece that's sitting in the back room or the young lady that's sitting in the back room that's almost hit her son coming down my road. It's unacceptable. I'm 54 years old. I lived in Troy my entire life. My parents, Bert and June Walters, have lived on Heartland Street since 1940. Approximately. My family still lives there. The compensation Mr. Fleming has gave me to a certain point, I do respect that very highly. I didn't get it out of anybody else in this office at all. I called your office twice, Ms. Schilling, and you refused to call me back. Twice, it was 3 times. Okay, it's inappropriate you for being a professional woman of your status to not call me back, and that's really inconsiderate. So why would the people of the city of Troy want to continuously you being a mayor when you don't even contact the people that contact you? Answer that question, please. Why don't you?
Sir, your time
I
is
just
going.
asked you a question.
Sir?
Can you please answer it to the people of the city of Troy?
This is not the
I just asked you a question. Can you please answer it to the people of the city of Troy? Can you? Why didn't you call me back the 3 times that I called you? Mr. Fleming did. His wife did. Miss Miss Milton did. He knows what I'm speaking of. Miss Milton did. They even came to my house. They listened to me. Paul Evans of the planning department, he listened to me. There's people who listened to me. How come you didn't? How come you didn't? And that we want you to be a mayor of the city of Troy? I'll be dead first.
Our next speaker is Nathan Clark. Nathan Clark, please.
Sucking up Grant's money. Grant's money. How much you get paid a year, my dear, for doing what? Nothing. Tell people how
live
much
on
you
Boyd
make for
Street.
doing nothing.
These are my children, Nathan and Renee.
Hi, Nathan. Do you want to adjust the microphone for speaking, sir? Go ahead. You can,
Well, he's-
it goes down.
He's shy. The lady told me I could speak on his behalf, but he also, our street is very narrow. They have to walk on the grass, mailbox to mailbox, and he still almost got hit by a car. If he didn't just step out of the way and happen to look behind him. I've had to replace my mailbox one time, and since then, another car had hit my mailbox, and there's pieces of rear mirror smashed to pieces on my front lawn, where my daughter runs around with shoeless. This is a big concern on Boyd Street. I'm very concerned for my children. If this was any of your children, you would be on top of it. Things would have happened. There's no through, traffic cannot come and go through Boyd Street. Not with these, you have to take a wide turn to take that turn to Baker. I walked my son to school one day, and I actually had to stop cars so we could cross the street. Of that, we're walking into a ditch. Now imagine in the winter when his dad's trying to get ready for work and he has to park his car out in the street so he can shovel his driveway. Imagine how much more backed up that's going to be. It's bumper to bumper as it is. We have a no outlet sign, we have a stop sign, people run through that stop sign, people speed, and there's a lot of children in this neighborhood, and my two, very concerned about. I can't even have them play in the front yard. It scares me to crap. I have to send them in the back. So I'm asking you, please, all of you, take into consideration of these children. What does it have? Does a child have to die before something actually happens? I do not want to see that happen. If my child ends up in the hospital, I would be devastated. He's a very good kid, good grades, not a troublemaker. You can look him up in the school. His name's Nathan Clark. My daughter, elementary, Renee Clark, very good child. Look her up. Anything happens to my children, I swear, I will not end. And I will not be satisfied. So please, please take into consideration of what is going on Boyd Street.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Peters. Richard Peters, you signed up next.
Evening, Council.
evening.
Yeah, citizens of Troy. It seems like everybody's in a kind of a grisly mood tonight, but I kind of think we're deja vu all over again here. First of all, this kind of Rupert Murdoch stuff that's being promoted in this town, where slash and burn and cut everything, that somehow government's going to function better, I really reject that. You may have sure we have grievances and stuff like that, but it seems to me that what they're promoting is a little bit different. They come in, they shout and they yell, and if they don't get their own way, they shout and yell some more. And that seems to me very I guess you call it antithetical against what good government should be all about. I also believe that Congress can do better than this Taft-Hoover wing of its party, where it wants to balance the budget on the backs of the middle class and the poor people. I don't think it worked back in the 20s, and I don't think it'll work now. And also, I would urge that the Justice Department, when it starts enforcing its antitrust laws, go across not only military contractors, agribusiness, maybe in the aerospace, but do it across the economy where we have a more perfect competition for everybody. And finally, let me guess. Well, I guess, yeah, I think that's about it. So also I want to say I think you're a nice person, and I'm sure you got a lot of, you've been taking these hits for years now, and I'm not saying that the person was sin or nothing like that, and I'm sure they mean well, but I think you do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Next we'll hear from Marv Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I believe the people back there probably have a real concern about their kids getting to school, but I think they should take it up with the school board, because many times from your council seats you've said that kids walking to school is no concern for the city.
We have.
Okay? So,
Please don't shout.
so I'd just like to second their concern about our kids walking to school, because Detroit, they're escorted by special people going to school, and in Troy, it's so terrible going to school, the kids have to be bused to school because it's so terrible for our kids to walk to school. But they attack Detroit. I'd also like to bring up an old story about the Fisher brothers. A long time ago, the Fisher brothers owned both Detroit National Bank, and Fisher Brothers Motors. So the guy at the Fisher Motors went to Bank of Detroit and asked them, how much does it cost you to process checks? And I'm bringing that up because normally when you guys have a lot a little bit of blurb, but one time you guys actually showed how much you paid for your checks, so everybody knows how much you pay for your checks. But what the one Fisher brother did to the other Fisher brother was discount the checks for Fisher Motors. So General Motors lost money that year, but NBD paid big profit sharing checks. And that's how these fees, how I consider some crooked activities can go on even beneath the eyes, because just because they say it costs so much per check, is that really the cost of the check? I'm bringing that up because a few years ago you dragged me out of here because Bank of America was the President Davy. Remember Davy? I call Bank of America all the time by myself. Okay, here they're being sued by the government, and you guys praise Davy of being such a fantastic thing. Now, how many people does an organization got to have crooks in it before you ban it from the city? Now, if somebody had a liquor license and was dealing with criminals, they would be kicked out of, not the Troy Chamber. The Troy Chamber is allotted. But I tell you, there's 17 or 15 companies out there that get sued on a regular basis, and they're criminals, according to President Obama even attacked. But this city praises it. Also, most of the cities around here are suing Countrywide, and they're getting large settlements. Why not the city of Troy? Because I believe Bank of America gave some of you people special rates on your loan. Into that concept, because why is this the only city in Oakland County that's not suing Countrywide, not collecting $200,000 to $300,000 because of the bad loans? Because somebody in this city's crooked. And also, when I talk about suing Troy, I don't want the money. I'm going to bank it someplace and put it into your civic projects, because apparently you got to beg homeowners only for $60 for the library. By the way, I live in this trailer park because you guys want to sue me for slander. You can take my $1,000 trailer, okay? You ain't going to find my money outside this country, because you always telling somebody up there I'm slandering somebody up there, McGinnis. I don't see nobody knock on my door, okay? So don't be threatening me with that slander stuff, or you be slandered.
Excuse me.
You want me to talk to you? You tell your Council McGinnis, next time she wants to say I'm going to slander somebody, I'm going to start suing her.
Please don't refer to Councilwoman McGinnis as McGinnis. That is not proper way to
I can't pronounce anybody's name right. You want me to start using shop language to describe what I think of you guys? All of you guys. You guys just saw some kid going to get run over. You didn't tell him to go to the school board to get it fixed. You guys set up there a bunch of lumps. Now, I know I'm past my 5 minutes, but I tell you what, this city's going to change. And if anybody votes for anybody who's been in politics in this city, they deserve what they're going to get, because I will bring the lawsuits. I just can't find the honest person to park it with. So if you find some, you tell me who's honest in this city, Mayor, I'll park the money. You let anybody know, my phone number's in the thing. You find me an honest person in Troy, and I'll park my money with them. Have a good day, people.
Our next person to speak is Neil Yazansky. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, esteemed city employees. I actually would like to address my remarks to the people listening in the audience today. Thank you, first off, for turning in. I think that it's essential that people be well informed about how City Council works, both sometimes when it works well and sometimes when it doesn't. And the best way to do that is to pay attention. For the folks in the audience as well, that's excellent. I wanted to just take a moment of your time today to talk about why I'm running for City Council. When my wife Lori and I moved to the city about 6 years ago, we did so because it was a great place to work and to live and to play. And the short answer is I want to keep it that way. So I know that we're facing some tough economic times right now, and in my estimation, tough problems call for tough answers. And before I entered the race, I saw a lot of city council candidates who I'm sure have their own good ideas and their best of intentions, but I think that they would prefer to offer the easy answer to the tough solutions. And frankly, I think that's what got us into the problem in the first place that we're having. Specifically, but just overall. And I know this job can be quite difficult, as I think has been evidence here today, because there's real issues that matter here, and people are counting on an effective city council to do that. And I'd like to pledge not only to be an effective city council member, but also someone who can build consensus and work in a way that our kids will be proud of, because this is a great city, and it's going to take work to keep it that way. It's not going to be easy, but in the end of the day, it'll be worthwhile. So if you'd like more information on my candidacy, I can be found at voteneil.org. That's Neil, voteneil.org. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. That concludes those that signed up to speak. And so we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is response to public comment. Any council members or staff members that have a response? Mr. Zerlag?
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe there's a resolution to the Boyd Street traffic issue. I know the police department's working in conjunction. Can you hear me okay?
Barely.
My apologies. The police department has been working in conjunction with the Troy School District as well as our traffic engineering department. And if I could find Chief Mayer, I'd like him to give us an update as to how we are resolving that issue. Thanks.
I believe
He'll be here
that he
momentarily.
was speaking with Mr. Walters.
He'll be here in 14 seconds. if you could give an update on the resolution for the Boyd Street issue and your workings with the Traffic Engineering Department and the Troy School District.
Certainly. I apologize. I was out speaking to the gentleman in the foyer there. The police department became aware of some issues on Boyd Street through various complaints. We worked closely with the school district. We did our extra patrol. We put the traffic safety officers there. They watched the area for the problems that we were getting complaints on, which was initially complaints on the buses speeding. The investigation revealed that the buses weren't speeding. They're large, so they appear to be traveling at a high rate of speed. The school district has on the buses automatic vehicle locator so they can track the speed in that, and the buses were not speeding. They appear to be speeding because they're large. There is an increase in traffic there because of the times for Baker Middle School and the International Academy are at the same time for the start and finish of school. So there was a large amount of traffic that was out on the norm that started out there. They were traveling on Boyd Street, which is a narrow roadway without sidewalks. So you had children walking to school, and they were walking in the roadway because there was no sidewalks, and then you had the traffic, not a good combination. There was also some concerns about mailboxes getting struck and lawns getting driven over. We looked into those, and we were not able to ascertain that had occurred. We met with the traffic engineering, Mr. Hootery, the Dr. Fowler and two other people from the school district, and the traffic safety and the people from the police department. To make a long story short, what we ended up ascertaining was we could solve a lot of the traffic flow problems down there by changing the traffic signal timing on Torpy and Rochester to allow good ingress and egress of the school buses. And by doing that, we've shifted the bus traffic from Boyd Street to Torpy Street, which is traditionally where the buses would go to get back to the school. And then we had no issues with the buses being able to get out because we changed the timing to make that longer. Mr. Hootery was able to facilitate that. In speaking to the gentleman who was up here previously, we still apparently have some issues with the traffic volume on Boyd Street. He has proposed, and some other people have proposed some other solutions, but that would require opening up roadways that aren't there. So we're still continuing to work on the issue. Regarding the other traffic, the school district is very willing to look at this, but they're locked in for this school year, is what we've been told. So we'll see what we can keep doing. We'll still try to work with the problem. We don't want people to be concerned like they obviously are, but we'll do what we can with it. Does that answer your question, Ms. Manager?
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate
Certainly.
you giving us that update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on response to public comment? If not, then we'll go on to our regular business. And the first item for business is a waiver of bids for the purchase of the Vindicator fire nozzles.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I'm going to move this resolution. Again, it's a sole bid because it's the only one that makes it. So it's whereas First Strike Technologies Incorporated of Kansas, Illinois is the sole manufacturer and distributor for the Vindicator line of fire nozzles. And whereas Vindicator nozzles have been field tested at the city's fire stations and found to improve firefighter safety, use less water, and limit water damage, now therefore be it resolved that Troy City Council hereby waives formal bidding procedures and authorizes the purchase of 24 Vindicator heavy attack nozzles from the sole manufacturer and distributor, First Strike Technologies Incorporated of Kansas, Illinois, for an estimated total cost of $20,499.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion of the motion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howrelack?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-5 is the designation of the voting delegates at the annual meeting of the Michigan Municipal League. I know that Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin will be there because she's on some committees there and, in fact, going to receive an award. So she'll be there. I don't know who else is going to be there, but we need to fill in delegate and then the alternate position.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I would resolve that the Troy City Council hereby designates Maureen McGinnis as principal official representative, official voting delegate, and hereby designates Mary Kerwin as the alternate official representative, official alternate voting delegate, to cast the vote of the City of Troy at the annual business meeting of the Michigan Municipal League to be held October 4th through October 7th, 2011 in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we designate Councilwoman McGinnis as the principal voting delegate and Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin as the alternate voting delegate for the Michigan Municipal League annual meeting. Discussion, Councilman Howrelack?
Mayor, yes, I wanted to know if it was necessary for us to have two representatives in Grand Rapids, seeing as how one of the two will actually not be on the City Council after the election in November. And I think in light of the economic times, we need to be frugal with the amount of money that we're spending on travel. So I was just curious as to whether or not both Councilwoman McGinnis and Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin intend to be at the MML convention in Grand Rapids this year.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
In response, I serve as president. Officials Academy. We put together the convention itself, and I will, in fact, be one of the presenters at a major event. So I know that I'm planning to go. Of course, we have Councilmember McGinnis, who's not only very involved in a number of committees, is also receiving an award at the convention.
So, Mayor,
Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howernack?
I guess my question is, will there be a cost for Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin to attend?
I will be attending the convention.
And will there be a cost for the city for Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin to attend?
Yes, I registered in accordance with, I believe we passed a resolution some time ago. There was no question at that time. Is that correct? It passed unanimously.
Well, we all have our opinions, but I believe that anybody who is not serving after November should not be attending, at least not on the dole of the city. So that's my opinion.
Further discussion? The vote, Mrs. Binner?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howerlag?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. Motion passes. I-6 is the proposed Troy Public Library budget for the fiscal years ending 2012 through 2014.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I think we've received the material, and I'll now move the resolution. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves the Troy Public Library's annual budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2012, as recommended by City Management, which amends the City of Troy's 2011-12 budget as shown on Attachment 1. And be it further resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves the Troy Public Library's 3-year budget from July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2014, as recommended by City Management, which amends the City of Troy's 3-year budget as shown on Attachment 2.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howernack and then Councilman Fleming.
First question is with respect to the internal service charge for IT. The charge of $3,300 per computer. I'm curious as to, because my calculation shows that the new charge to the library for this fiscal year for internal, for IT will be $343,980 in addition to the amount that we're spending on the reservation system and checkout system, which I believe is, my recollection is Melcat. And that seems like a very large amount. I'm curious as to what the library is receiving from the city's internal service fund for $343,980.
Yes. Mr. Sirleaf?
I'd like Gert Periscoven to start out indicating costs for IT that's part of the internal service funds. Gert?
Good evening.
Mayor, City Council, good evening. Basically, the IT department is an internal service fund, which means that all the departments fund the department. And so everybody shares in the services equally, so the cost per computer is the same, not just for the library, but for all departments. And it doesn't just include replacement of computers, which I know a lot of people mention. That's actually a very small part of what we do. There's actually 3 areas that we provide service for to all the departments. What we call client support, which is support for the desktop computers, the hardware replacement of that, the software, any questions as far as training or how to utilize the software. We provide support for certain department-specific software. For example, at the DPW, they have a fueling system, a meter reading system. In the library specifically, there are a few different packages that we do support that no other department actually utilizes, such as VenPrint, Phoronix Deep Freeze, and Envisionware, which is used by the public. We're also on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there are any issues, and specifically at the library, because they are open on weekends where the other departments aside from police and fire require support. We also provide application support for citywide applications, including the financial system, document imaging, any other large application throughout the city. We help implement and select those systems. So we use our expertise as far as our staff to do a lot of that. It keeps the cost down because we use less outside resources when we're doing that. We also do custom programming and interfacing between systems. We do our own SQL Server administration. We create reports, ad hoc reports out of any of the systems that we're requested to do that for. We install updates and test them for all of those applications. We set up repetitive reports if requested. We also do infrastructure support, so part of that money includes the support of the entire network in the city. We have actually 2 networks. There's a separate one in the library that's utilized just by the public, and there's a wireless network in there too, so we provide support for all of that. We pay for the maintenance and any hardware replacements for that system. We maintain all of the servers in the system, and we have, I don't know, upwards of 30 servers that we maintain. Systems. We maintain, let's see, the antivirus systems, web and spam filters, maintaining all the operating systems, make sure they're up to date for security purposes. And we also support the telecommunication system, so that's the phone system. We provide support for every single phone, including a lot of cellular phones now. We maintain standard images for our workstations, again, to make sure that we're up to date on all the software. So that's kind of a brief outline of some of the things that we do. Specifically at the library, on top of those, we do have a person located there that spends about 60% of his time strictly on library issues. We regularly re-image the tech room, and there's about 80 computers in that room. I think that we, on a quarterly basis, we completely re-image all those machines. Again, as I mentioned, there's a separate public network that we support and specific software for the library, as well as maintaining support and backup of the Polaris library automation system. And we do also provide the training room in the basement, which has 17 computers, and that is not included in the library count that we charge to them, but they do utilize that for free classes. So that's generally an outline of what we do. And the chargeback system is a fairly fair and method of charging back, and basically everybody just shares in that entire cost. We take our total operating budget divided by the number of computers, and that's the charge per computer to each department.
So is there any variation between the type of computer, or is it just a computer is the same rate?
Just a computer, same rate.
So a computer with a pretty monstrous software package and a pretty heavy-duty motherboard and internal components is going to be charged the same as a rather old computer in the library that's being used by the general public?
It is, but generally the computers are pretty standard throughout the city. We really don't have too many that are really high level and really low level.
The software components can certainly vary. I mean, I think that software components, say, for example, in planning and building, for example, is different than the software the general public is using. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. As far as the 104 computers now, I believe, in the library, the breakdown, did I hear you correctly? There are 80 public?
Something, 75? Sure.
I do want to reiterate, Councilman Howell, excuse me, before I get into that. There are 104 computers in the library, and I just did on my paper 3,300 times 104, and I came up with 343,200, which is why I used that number in the budget. And I think that was different than the number you had, 343,982.
Well, because the of 43,200, and the prior year's budget was 300,780. But I don't know that we need to be concerned about a few $100s here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had the same numbers, because when you said that, I almost fell over and thought I had to go back and redo my budget. So, okay. Yes, the library has 104 computers, and there are about 80 devoted to the public. They are spread out in the Technology Center, which has about 60, and the Youth Services area, which has 12, and then the Teen Center that has 8. So that's 80, and then the rest are for staff. There are 12 alone in the Circulation Department.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilman Fleming, you asked for the floor.
Yeah, that seemed exorbitant to me, too, $3,300 a computer. I know there are companies in this city that actually do this, you know, for a fee. I don't know if we've ever considered outsourcing the library to that to save some money. I understand how you're allocating by computer. That's logical. It makes sense to me. I understand you're just taking all your overhead costs and everything and allocating. But this is quite a burden on the library, almost $344,000 a year for computer services. So I think what we should be doing is looking at possibly, there are other companies, I could name one now that's very popular in this area that does this type work. We could just make a comparison to see how we're doing. Maybe that's something that management would want to have the purchasing department do it at some point, because when I saw that number, I thought, that's really exorbitant, very high. The other thing I'm disappointed in that we're still closed on Saturdays. I know you put your budget together, but I was really optimistic, and I think a lot of people in the city were really hoping that some way, somehow, we could look at I know you've increased your staff, but did we really work, well, you increased from where you were in the past few months. You've gone back to the prior year, so you're exactly the same staffing you were just a year ago, I believe. But I'm wondering if we've really given a serious look at possibly keeping it open on a Saturday. I know you got computer coverage now for 24/7, and we are closed on Saturdays. So,
well,
could you address that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. When I started at the Troy Library in 2007, June of 2007, the budget was around $5.2 million. There were 18 full-time staff members and 100 part-time staff members. At this point in time, we have 56 staff members on the books, but I have 3 people out on medical leave. I have 3 full-time staff members. I have 50 part-time staff members. I am very pleased every day that I can keep the library open for 55 hours a week, using those numbers, to be frank with you. For this coming year's budget, we have 6 full-time staff members and 63 part-time staff members, which actually represents a 1 part-time staff person decrease from last year. When you look back for the budget for 2009-2010, which was the last year that the library was open for 65 hours a week, that budget was close to $3.7 million. And it's my considered opinion that the library would need close to that to be open 65 hours a week. The library, with the millage dedicated funding, can get to almost $3 million, but that's as close as we can get. And I'm absolutely open. I'd love to be open on Saturdays again, but right now with 6 full-time staff members and 63 part-time staff members, I simply do not do that.
Mr. Zerle?
Thank you. As Kathy mentioned, at our high point, our budget was about $5.2 million. We're averaging now about $2.9 million. So that's over $3 million. That's $3.2 million less, essentially, than our high point. $2.3 million. Thank you. And the issue on the computers, I liken it to municipalities that sometimes offer fire department protection to surrounding political jurisdictions, whether they be townships or other municipalities. And oftentimes the benchmark is the cost per run. And when that outside municipality or township has 17 fires, they have a set amount, and they base the charge to that municipality on a cost per run. But if someone were to ask the question, if there were no runs in those municipalities, would there still be a cost to the host city? And the answer is yes, there would be. And that's similar to what we do with the IT department. We use computers as a benchmark, but we have to take the entire department and determine a way to assess that cost for essentially every department. And this is our first time that we actually have a general fund, separate fund, dedicated millage, if you will, for a department. And we need to take a better look at how we disseminate costs for support services. And we're always taking a look at continuous improvement in all of our departments.
Further discussion of the motion? Councilwoman Beltramini?
Along that line, question. For this Manager. Because we are going to have to assess costs back to the city under a dedicated millage, I have a little bit of heartburn in this case beyond this year of them paying a flat rate per computer, particularly if many of those computers do not, or they don't use. Now, I know they're going to use the payroll and those systems need to be paid for and those sorts of things. And if through this computer pricing that can be done, but quite honestly, I think we need to look more carefully under a dedicated millage scenario under actual use. What are they actually using? And as we move forward in trying to price things appropriately for a dedicated millage, that might be something to consider. I see that while we were in shutdown mode, we came in about $400,000 under budget. Those are the preliminary figures from last year. And I understand from your answers that it was primarily because of shutdown mode. So there were things that would normally be replenished and were not. And so that means there's a little bit of an uptake this year in getting those things replenished. And I understand all of that, and I'm good with that. I am concerned as we move forward, and I know you've talked about a strategic plan, and getting to the meat of what that needs to be and what kind of a direction. And in some ways, speaking to Councilman Fleming's point, I think maybe it's important to meet with not just library staff, but people from the co-op, users of the library, the community people. Let's put together a broad-based group to do that and not do it in a back room somewhere and then bring a finished plan for council to vote on. I'm concerned that everybody has input into that, quite honestly, and I want to see it done that way as opposed to professionally, so to speak.
Your Honor, we'll be happy to submit a methodology for a strategic plan before we actually proceed to implement it for City Council approval in that respect.
Madam Mayor? I think that the plan for having a strategic plan should involve some community members, but it also should have the professional input about the library, and I think that's very important. And I think that's something that we should be looking at, and the next council should take a look at, is how that's going to evolve. We don't want to have it be so many members that it becomes cumbersome and we really don't have a good finished product, but we want to have, enough input. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, you asked for the floor.
Thank you. It's a good discussion. I just wanted to respond to some of the things I heard. To Council Member Fleming's hope that we would be open 7 days. We do recognize this was a and that during the discussion of compromise, we well understood what a 0.7 mil would do, and then this is where we are on that. In course of the community conversations, there was never a discussion about 7 days. People understood this is what it would get. It is 6 days, and as our library director has pointed out many times, Saturdays are open at other libraries, and that with our card now we have the opportunity to go to many other libraries, but Sunday is nearly uniquely Troy's, and so we really are looking at that. Next to the strategic plan, again through community conversations, I had an opportunity to hear our library director speak with great enthusiasm about bringing together a group to develop a strategic plan involving many stakeholders in the community, all inclusive, and I know that she's looking forward to that, and we are as well. So we celebrate that, and there is a cost for part of the strategic plan in here, but I know that it will be a very good process and look forward to seeing that. And thirdly, the charge for services, which is a concern, because going out for to have the community conversations with people and having the dialogues, whether it was through interfaith groups or the community conversations that we held, many people had discussion about specifically that when they vote to tax themselves for the library, that money would go to the library. And I have a concern in seeing that dedicated millage then somehow be bled into other areas. So I caution administration in the future. I don't see that in this budget, and I will certainly vote yes on this budget and the 3-year budget. But caution that dedicated millage money, which was voted by this community to go to the library, in fact, goes to the library for the things that we said it would be used for. That's all I have to say.
Well, I'd like to speak to that for a minute. I think that the community should realize that in running any department, such as the library, there are costs for various kinds of things that's part of that whole budget, and some of it overlaps with other departments, and our library has been exemplary in its running of the library, and the fact that people from other communities come that we are in the consortium with, and just like this Saturday, Sunday thing, people, if they want to visit a library on Saturday, would go to one of the other ones, and then some people from other communities come to ours on Sunday. There's always a big amount of people that come there. But I think that people that I've talked to in the community are very comfortable with the fact that we're looking at a 3-year budget for the library, just as we are 3-year budget for the total city, and that costs involved with running something of that nature, that we have the computers there for people to use, being the materials, and especially in view of the fact that at the 0.7 mils for this year, the amount that will be, raise will be less in the following years if the valuations on homes and businesses and commercial keep at the level that they say they're going to be declining. It'll be less money coming in. So it's important that they not overspend in the first year, and I think that that's very evident, that they're being very cautious in the first year here so that the funds will extend out for the 5-year duration of the dedicated funding. And I appreciate that from the library, the staff, and the finance people that have looked at that. I think it's very important. Thank you all.
Mayor.
Further discussion on the budget of the library, Councilman Slater?
Yeah, just a couple questions about the computers, because that seems to be a concern with most everybody here. If I could just ask her a couple questions, if the city manager would allow that.
Yes, please.
There seemed to be some talk about a standalone computer system with the library. Would there be some security issues if our internal service with the computer IT department let some other outside entity handle the computers with the library?
For the public use libraries, they are actually on a physically separate network, so that could be maintained separately. But staff uses the city network. So if you wanted to separate that, it would be a little trickier. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that, we would cut off total communication to that building, physically disconnect it.
You would physically have to cut that off?
Yeah.
Correct. Because you wouldn't want anybody sneaking back into the police department, correct?
Right. I mean, there are some security things you can do, firewalls and things like that, but nothing is 100%. So I think if we weren't supporting that building, we would disconnect it.
Okay. Is it possible to charge for different types of computers throughout the system in the city, or would that be just cumbersome for you to do something like that?
You know, I think it would be very cumbersome because most of the computers are almost identical. We really buy them in batches. There's very few that have maybe a little bit more memory, or there's some laptops. But then you're nickel and diming, you're trying to track every little thing on every computer, and in the end, it probably wouldn't make that much of a difference. I don't think it would still work out pretty evenly for the departments.
Okay. This is an internal service, much like the DPW charges for vehicles.
Correct.
And they do a very similar, have a very similar system where they charge a price for a vehicle, whether it's a GMC Jimmy or it's a Chevy. so to speak. So you're doing basically the same thing the DPW does, correct?
Very similar. I mean, his is rolling so that he can charge by the mile when it's used, where it's sitting on somebody's desk. I can't take it from one desk and move it to another desk. I mean, one person basically needs it, full-time, or two people may share it part-time.
Okay.
It's not as easy to move and charge per hour type of thing.
Okay. This is very common for an internal service to be done this way, is that right?
Yes, you can ask the...
Mr. Dowling?
Yeah, absolutely. It's clearly customary and appropriate way that it's being done here. Again, as you said, with the motor pool or any of our internal service funds, clearly, as you spoke earlier, it's not just a computer you're buying, it's clearly the services of the cost of running a whole system. Again, with any internal service fund, it's just not just 1 year. If there's fund balance, then you would reduce the rates the next year. The idea is that you level it out over the years to support the department. And from a capital standpoint,
Mayor?
That we would...
Could you just use the microphone?
Yeah. Sure.
Thanks.
That from a capital standpoint, if we were looking at a motor pool and again, with our systems, computers and servers, the idea is that we're depreciating those. It's not a fund balance, it's a net asset. The idea being that at the end of the day, instead of an asset, I've got cash to buy the new asset with. So it replenishes itself as a... And again, it has to pay for itself over time. We come up with a standard, equitable way that we believe that we can allocate the costs, just as any other city that I've been associated with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman McGinnis?
I just have a comment. I don't have any questions, but it just is to further Councilwoman Beltramini's point. And I remember that when we were discussing boards and committees most recently, and we were talking about new ways to get inputs from citizens and stakeholders in the community, particularly as it relates to the library, well, may change the format of how we're receiving the information, no longer having the library advisory board. We did at that time have a conversation about a new way to get that information, and I was happy to see that there was a mention of the strategic plan. I know when I've asked questions, to follow-up questions about getting that input, first and foremost, business is getting a budget together and making sure that we had that set up. But I'm glad to see that it's still on the radar, and I definitely would like to be part of the process of developing that, since it may end up being a different way to receive input in other areas that we're looking for input from the community. So I'm anxious to hear what we have going forward on the strategic plan. I was really glad to see that that was included in the budget, and I just wanted to agree with Councilwoman Beltramini's comments earlier.
Further discussion on the item?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
How many people are working in IT right now?
There's currently 9 budgeted positions. Actually, 1 is vacant, so there's 8.
And you said there's one person that's... About 60% of that person's time is at the library, is that correct?
That's correct.
As far as the remaining personnel in your department, how much time do you think is dedicated to the library, would you say?
That's hard to say because we've got a network administrator that handles the entire network. So whatever portion of that network that the library utilizes would really be equivalent to the number of computers they have. I mean, there's no way, any work he does benefits everybody. So there's no way to really allocate that other than per computer, although, as I mentioned, they have a separate network there, so we do spend a little more time on that. So.
Okay, thank you. The one thing I would say to management that would help is if we can get a breakdown on the net assets in the internal service fund as far as how much of that is attributed to each piece of the internal service fund, because my concern is why, well, I have a couple concerns. One is why the rate for the library, at least, I don't know what it is for the rest of the city, has gone up from $2,800 to $3,200 in the course of a year, and that's almost 18%. That's one concern. The other concern is proper matching of internal service fund charges to the actual usage. And if we have all of these things that are happening and they're not directly attributable to actually the physical presence of a computer in a department, then I'm not sure. There may be more going on. Here, and I don't see that, and so I'm concerned about properly matching the cost to the charge. And the question therefore becomes, is the library, for example, subsidizing other departments by paying more in an internal charge? So is the library paying more than their share? And for example, is Parks and Rec or legal or the city manager's office or the city council paying less than their fair share? And so I don't know, because I just see a number that's thrown in front of us, and we're talking 20% of the IT budget, 15% of the library budget, and I'm very uncomfortable with that, and I think it has a dramatic impact on the service users, basically the people that come to use the library. Because one of my objectives, at least, and I would hope that this city and this city council would desire to eventually get to the point where we have 7-day service, at least during the school year. And therefore, every $50,000 or $100,000 piece adds up. I mean, we're looking at the previous year's budget going up to the current year's budget, because last year's budget, according to what I have here, for capital and for operating, was $2.7 million. We used $2.3 million of that, and now we're going to have a budget of almost $3 million, and yet we somehow don't have enough money to hire people to operate the library on a 7-day-a-week basis, again, at least during the school year. I think that's an important objective, that if we're going to do a 3-year budget, I understand that perhaps changes in the first year, but the next 2 years, we really should have this thing open 7 days a week, again, at least during the school year. The current budget, I'm not comfortable with, the proposed budget, for that reason and all the other reasons why I've stated. But I really wish that we could actually, get into these issues a little bit better so that the people of this city can be able to use their library more frequently than 6 days a week.
Further discussion of the item? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Motion to postpone until the second meeting in October so we can properly address the issues that have been just mentioned.
Is there a second?
I'll support that.
Moved by Councilman Howard, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we postpone the item to the second meeting in October. Discussion of that motion. Councilman Fleming?
Oh, I just think that has some merit. We want to keep the library going. We're not saying we're going to do anything with the library. Keep it going just the way you're doing. You're doing a great job with it. But I would agree. I'd really like to see it open 7 days. If we can't do it this year, maybe we can do it next year. But rather than get a 3-year budget here tonight, I'm hoping that we can get open 7 days in the future. So I would be in favor of looking at that closer and delaying this vote as per Councilman Howard's resolution.
Madam
The one thing that, I'm not saying it will occur, but just as in our budget, we have budgeted the library budget could have budget amendments so things turn in a different way. But in order to be open 7 days, the cost is quite a bit. And it's not as if folks don't have libraries. If they really need information on Saturdays, it just isn't this particular library. So it's not as if they don't have service. Councilman Beltramini?
Madam Mayor, there have been a lot of issues, but and they all can be addressed. I don't believe that this budget needs to be postponed to get that done. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin was exactly right. In the roundtables, 7 days was not discussed as a want by this community. It always was in the back of our minds that we'd like to revert to our award-winning library, but everyone that I talked to, by and large, felt that we needed to cut back. We needed to live leaner than we were living right now, and being able to go to someone else's library on a Saturday was a doable option. This budget can be amended as costs are tracked. That would be much more better than pulling something out of an ear to estimate. So let's track some costs. Let's see what happens. Let's have a strategic plan that involves all stakeholders in the community and move forward. We can address these issues, but we don't have to postpone this budget to do it.
Madam Mayor.
Further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Again, and what's before us is not the vote on a 7-day-a-week library. It's, I hear my colleagues saying it's a whole think that... We're looking at real numbers here. The library hasn't been able to buy anything new. The library's been in stasis. The vote was in early August. We're at the end of September. I'm bothered because I see that there is a pattern from electeds who choose not to govern when they're sitting and governing. We see it in Lansing where people say, well, we can't do anything now because there's an election coming up. We see it in Congress, we can't do anything now because there's an election coming up. For heaven's sakes, we're sitting in the seats. This is a budget. We expected to have it come before. Let's vote tonight, make it happen, so that the library can begin operating as we promised the people that it would. I'm ready for the vote.
Further discussion on the postponement?
Mayor,
Councilman Howard?
a question for management. When will the city actually start receiving the new tax revenue? Will that not be assessed on the winter tax bill, and so we won't be receiving that for another couple of months?
That's my understanding. Is that your understanding, Tom?
I'd like to indicate that when we talked about doing the bridge for the library, there were certain funds that were being used, that were allowed to be used in order to have the bridge until the new funds could be allocated. Is that not correct, Mr.
That's
Zerler?
correct.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
I would hope that we all have the same vested interest in here. Let me explain this to you, and maybe you can understand it in these. Because we're talking about transparency. We're talking about a city that the majority of the electorate voted to approve a tax increase earlier this year. And then we come back with a budget that shows a 17.8% increase in IT costs. We also have a budget that comes back and has an overall increase in expenditures, and yet effectively very little tangible service enhancements. And so the question that naturally is raised, and we need to answer that, even if nothing changes in the budget, even if nothing changes in the budget 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now, we need to answer the question of why does it seem that some of this library tax revenue is being funneled to subsidize the rest of the city's operations. And if we can answer that question, the people that voted yes and the people that voted no will at least have some sort of faith in the process that the monies that are being taxed of them are being properly budgeted and properly spent. Now, I would hope that we could all have that vested interest. This is not about me. This is about trying to protect the integrity of the process. And again, if nothing changes, then we can at least go to bed knowing that we have more answers than we have questions, as opposed to today when there are more questions than answers.
In the
Your Honor?
response from Councilmember Beltramini asked, there were certain things delineated here under operating costs and capital costs, which show that a great deal of the money is going toward the collection budget. It's going toward more in personnel services, that's people that are able to serve the library in supplies. Yes, some of it is going for IT, but that was expected. And so I see a lot of the costs going to things that actually people use. And when I go to the library, I'm glad to have all of those things. In fact, I've asked about some new books that, you know, people want to get. I can get it, but I have to wait for my turn. And so that's why it's important for us to approve the budget. And I think this is a realistic budget. That's my impression. Mr. Zerlag?
Thank you. I'm confident that our IT director, Mrs. Paraskeven, and again, pardon my voice, can justify further that the library is being treated no different than any other department that we have in terms of the cost to supply computer services. I'm confident of that. I'm also confident that in the final analysis, when we take a look at what the actual costs are by general fund operations to the library, that there's not a subsidy of the library to the general fund. There's a subsidy of the general fund to the library, and the future city council is going to have to reconcile that to some respect. An example that I hope never comes to fruition is that our liability insurance, property and casualty insurance, carries with a $500,000 deductible per occurrence with an aggregate stop loss of about $2.5 million, which means they're responsible for the first $2.5 million bucks, essentially out of general fund, through our insurance company to pay that. If someone cracks their skull on a library terrazzo floor and results in a $250,000 award, where's that money coming from? It's coming from the general fund loss fund that we've been feeding to our insurance company for the past several years. I'm not going to ask Kathy Russ to cut a check for $250,000 if that were to occur. Same with Mrs. Bloom. If there's advice that Lori gives the library, she's not going to send the library a bill for her legal services. It's coming out of general fund, essentially with no subsidy by the library for that service. And I can go on and on, purchasing, HR, accounting, payroll.
Okay, further discussion on this is on the postponement. Councilwoman Beltramini.
Only as a point of clarification, Mr. Zerlag, the budget that we passed May 16th included a $3,300 per computer charge for all departments. This is not something that staff came up with on the 3rd of August.
I believe that's correct, but I want to make sure I'm accurate. I'm going to ask Gert to respond to that. I believe that's the case.
Yes, that is correct. That was set long before.
I thought. Thank you.
Further discussion on the postponement?
Mayor?
Councilman Slater?
You know, I respect Councilman Howlick's remarks, but he does speak for himself. And I read 4 pages of questions and answers that I was furnished today. satisfied today with the budget, and I agree with Councilwoman Beltramini that we're going to track what's going on here, and we'll make adjustments if need be. But today, let's vote.
Okay, further discussion on the postponement? The vote, Mrs. Bittner, on the postponement?
Councilmember Howlerlack?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
No.
Councilmember McGinnis?
No.
Councilmember Slater?
No.
Mayor Schilling?
No.
Councilmember Beltramini?
No.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Did you call in Councilman Howard?
Yes.
The main motion, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howlerlack?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-7 is the ordinance revisions in accordance with the Troy City Council resolutions to dissolve some boards and committees. It says boards and committees, but not all of them. Did I see you signaling, Mrs. Bloom?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that you knew that there was something on your tables. It's slightly revised from what was in the packet. Chapter been removed.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I'm going to move the resolution and read it, but I would like to, since some of the chapters have been removed, perhaps at the end of the meeting we can suspend our rules and then get back and look at some of those chapters. So for this, I will resolve that Troy City Council hereby amends Chapter 27, Parks and Recreation Board of the Troy City Code in accordance with the proposal prepared by City Management. A copy of this ordinance shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin and seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini that we approve the resolution as read. You left out the first section. I'm trying to find on the yellow slip. Would you please indicate where? Okay,
Here.
thank you. I was busy signing things at the beginning and didn't see that. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Moved by, it's moved in second. Anyone have a discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
So we're going from 10 to 8 members, as I understand it, primarily because there are 2 of these boards that used to recommend membership who are no longer in existence. But would it be possible to have a ninth member who is either voting or non-voting, who is a senior citizen in the community? I think it's important that there be senior citizen representation on the Parks and Recreation Board, as the senior citizen community is heavy users of Parks and Recreation, especially in the community center.
Further discussion of the motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Fleming?
I agree with that. Councilman Howard makes a good point that we should have a senior citizen on this. I agree with the resolution, but we need to have a senior citizen on that board.
Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
The tradition actually of the Park and Rec Board, the majority have been senior citizens over time. So to give another slot, it's heavily weighted senior citizens.
Now?
Yeah, all of our boards and committees are heavily weighted senior citizens.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that's already happened.
It's in there.
I apologize for not knowing about the change in the resolution, but I didn't get one on my table. I can't find it at all, so that's why I acted like I didn't know what it was. Somehow I didn't get one. All right. The vote then on the new resolution?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Well, you know, again, I think that we can go from 10 to 9, but what we're doing is we are indeed cutting out a senior citizen position, and we're also cutting out a, well, the Troy Days Committee is less of an issue now, but we're going from 10 to 8. So I still have a concern with that. And I don't see that as being a big problem. I mean, yes, we may have a lot of senior citizens on the board now, but is that going to be that way in 2015, 2020, 25, and so on? So it's good to actually have it embedded in here.
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I understand the point. I think that you also could make the point that a person with disabilities would be well represented on that committee as well. I think it would be in the best interest for us to pass this as it stands now and look to amending the ordinance, much as we have with others, to say, do we want to make one of these 7 members a senior? Do we want to make one of these 7 members a person with disabilities? Do we want to make one of these persons a pass holder at the community center? I mean, there are all kinds of different constituencies that need to be discussed to flesh out this board if we want to make it truly representative. But right now, we need to delete the committees that no longer exist from this board.
Further discussion of the motion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Well, I understand that. The part that I don't understand is why you need to go from 10 members to 8, and that just seems to be somewhat arbitrary.
Further discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
No.
Motion passes. Consent agenda. Council members, do you have any items that you wish to have exempted from the vote?
J5.
J5. Any others? Could we have a resolution approving all other consent agenda items except J5?
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman McGinnis?
So moved.
Pardon?
So moved.
Support.
I was going to read it, but...
Moved by Councilwoman McGinnis, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we approve all the agenda items on the consent agenda with this vote, with the exception of J5 that shall be considered after the consent agenda item is. Discussion? Vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Haverlack?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilwoman Howard, you asked for J5?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. You know, the definitions on page, and I'm referring to, when I say the page numbers, the actual pages on the checklist. So page 12, section 4 has it's called definitions. And under alternative fuel vehicles, I see it's defined as motorized vehicles that use an energy source other than gasoline or a combination of gasoline and any other form of and another form of energy. And so what I found interesting was that defines a diesel engine as alternative fuel, and I don't really know that that was the intent, or at least most people wouldn't see that as the intent, but I figured I'd throw that out there and see what the answer is.
Mark Miller will be happy to answer your question, Mr. Howrylak.
I believe that the intent would not be to qualify a diesel engine. I mean, it's not considered alternative. I mean, it's fairly standard. I know, although in Europe they do have cleaner diesel, but those are coming into prominence here. Mr. Sabah, do you have any other comments related to that, since you work day-to-day with the Planning Commission?
I would agree with Mr. Miller's comment. I don't believe the intent was to include diesel as an alternative form of energy.
Further discussion of the motion?
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I believe some of us have sent suggestions to review to the Planning Department already. Perhaps that's one that would like to be reviewed. A simple or diesel addition would make sense. But we've sent some of those things. I saw some came from Councilmember Beltramini. I sent a list. And so some of that is just editorial. It's not changing the substance. But.
And we will incorporate those suggestions into the final document.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Are we looking for a resolution on this tonight?
Yes, there's a resolution to approve.
Well, just a couple more comments then, and I think that the council table is very much the appropriate venue. discussing these matters. So I would also add that I have concerns with a couple of things. One is that when we discuss recharging stations, there are no consistent national standards, and therefore, if our intent is to have something happen, then we actually need to have more details as far as what we define as a charging station, because basically anything with a plug could be considered a charging station by label. Then also, with respect to the definitions, we have a very strong emphasis on bicycle power, but we need to also have equal emphasis on human power. For example, walking to work, running to work, rollerblading, and other activities that don't necessarily require a bicycle but are also considered to be green transportation. Going back to the beginning of the document, do we really want to have anything automatic? So under parking requirement deviations, section F, we have automatic. And the reason why that's important is because the committee that's going to review the SDP and basically to give the developer the ability to have for example, a concession in return for doing these special things. The committee is effectively, by definition, under the control of the city manager and not under the control of either the Planning Commission or the City Council. And if you read it, there are 3 members of management. Again, all 3 of those. Report. The city manager. There are 2 members from the Planning Commission appointed by the city manager. That's by definition. And so you are essentially taking a lot of the controls out of the hands of elected and appointed officials and therefore out of the hands of the public. Is that what we want to have happen? Not for me. And then you have a number of different issues here with respect to the approval process. And you know, when you look at this chart here, is this really what we want? You know, is light pollution so important that we want to have a dark parking lot, a nice dark parking lot for crime to happen, and encourage people to do that, so that they can actually have a more profitable development in other areas? I'm not sure that we do. And if you go across this chart, I think there are a number of things which actually encourage a result that is contrary to the will of the public. So that's all I have to say right now.
Further discussion of the motion? For those in the public that are interested in finding out the details as well as definitions of what a recharging station is, etc., it's all documented here in the council agenda. So if you'd like further information, now that we've piqued your interest in this, you can find it online through our agenda or through the Planning Commission, correct? Planning Department?
We will post this document online so it's available for viewing or download at any time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zerlag?
I'd like, if I may, to have either Mr. Miller or Mr. Savadant respond to Mr. Howrylak's questions that he had posed, concerns.
Madam Mayor, I would just like to make a comment that but by no means do we promote dark parking lots. But what we do promote with this are appropriate lighted parking lots which do not send out light pollution. Many lights don't actually cause a lot of light spillage, and you can, if you design it correctly, you can then keep that light contained on the site. The other thing about charging stations is there are electrical vehicles which are going to be designed which can be charged from a standard outlet in the near future. So, that is pretty open in what's coming down the pipe in the world.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Representative Kerwin?
And I think, again, a reference to our master land plan, master land use, when you can see our master plan on the website, has a lot of the definitions and has a lot of the supports in many ways this document. So not only do you have it embedded in the ordinances, but a lot of the definitions and the interest of this community is embedded in that documented. And this is another area of sustainable development, so that when developers choose Troy, that they can move rapidly, but with an understanding of the direction that we intend to go.
Further discussion on this motion?
Mayor?
We don't have a motion, I guess. We just have the item brought up. Do we have a motion? Councilman Howard, you have another question?
Yes, well, I mean, if we're going to go down this way, you realize that when you emphasize electric vehicles, you're effectively talking about a coal and nuclear-fired vehicle, because that's where most of our electricity comes from. One of the cleanest burning sources of energy around is natural gas, and so we need to actually have something in here that encourages natural gas filling stations in the city. Did I miss something? I'm sorry, there's a hand up.
Madam Mayor, I think if you go to page 7 of the document under C, transportation purpose, it says electric, hybrid, natural gas, fuel cell, and other alternative fuel vehicles. So, I mean, we do consider that equal. We really do. But I don't believe diesel would be lumped into that category because it's not alternative, it's a standard.
Yeah, I'd just like to see us tighten that up a little bit and perhaps have a definition for hybrid. At least that would take care of that issue, and have more of an emphasis on natural gas, some sort of a filling station, for example, which is only appropriate probably in a handful of possible developments in the future.
We can make that happen.
Thanks. Thank you.
I move the approval of the resolution. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we approve J5.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltrame?
I just wanted to speak. My interpretation was different than Councilman Howrylak's. He talked about the Sustainable Design Review Committee, and it having 3 staff members and 2 Planning Commission members. And what I is, it makes it automatic for submission. It still has to go through appropriate site plan approval. And therefore, you will have the review of the Planning Commission. You will have several reviews of staff. And it will come back to the people's representatives to be approved. So I don't see that as the shady deal that seems to be implied there. I think it's still quite transparent and quite open for the public.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
The implication wasn't that it was shady.
Okay,
The implication was
sorry.
that it fast tracks and makes it, a site plan is different than having the ability to basically do one thing and get something else, which essentially, since this is a document that governs the processes used in a city, if somebody meets the and is approved by the committee, then they effectively have a right to do other things that other people don't. And again, that is by the choice of a committee that is neither elected nor appointed directly or indirectly by the people of the city. That's the concern there. There needs to be, for goodness sakes, at least have 3 of the 5 members from the Planning Commission who are appointed by the Planning Commission. So you would have 3/5 from the Planning Commission. Or, if you're going to do it this way, require there be a supermajority to pass. Therefore, there's at least an additional leg up to basically, have some sort of a commitment to do these things in return for something that's perceived to be the public good. Sure, this is our first time through, but perhaps that's something we can consider in the future. Once we've gone through this a few times, perhaps we'll... the documents.
Mrs. Bittner, the vote, please.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion passes. Council will take a 5-minute break. There were some students that wanted something signed. Any of the council members can sign that. discussion, and we've handled consent. Now we're on to memorandums. I see we have several things coming up, and council comments.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I'm wondering if we could suspend the rules. Again, under I-7, there were a couple items on different chapters, and I was hoping to hear from the attorney. I know we directed her at a previous study session to take a look at chapters 9, 12, and 13, and I believe she's done that, and I'd love to hear from her in response to that, and whether we would in fact have time to do a resolution. So could we suspend rules? I move.
Do we have a support to suspend the rules?
Support.
Who was that?
Me.
Okay. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Beltramini, that we suspend the rules.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
I'm a little unclear of the intent, so if the maker could just speak a little bit more so I can understand what the where we're going with this.
Is it to discuss the part of I-7 that we left out?
There was I-7, and also we had also looked at Chapter 9, and there may very well be do a resolution in terms of Chapter 9. I believe the changes are prepared, and that we'd be ready to move on.
Does that clarify, Councilman Howard?
Chapter 9, is that the other piece of the I-7?
Yes.
No, that was 13.
It would be, yeah.
It's different.
13, but they're tied together, I think.
I mean, we can discuss it, but I mean, if we don't have language here, we're just going to, okay.
Okay. All right, further discussion on the suspension? Mrs. Bittner? The vote?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, do you have an...
Madam Mayor, when we went into the study session, we had a study session well, now actually, when we had talked about boards and committees almost a year ago, we had talked about looking at certain chapters that we had language which talked about boards and committees, and we've been trying to weed our way through that. We directed the city attorney to get with the city clerk at a study session not too long ago regarding some of the boards and committees, particularly the library